I promised you that we would review some of the foundational principles that we learned in our original Foundations course, the principles that govern visceral osteopathy. But specifically for the purposes of this course, we're going to talk about the most important principles that govern the functioning of the esophagus. Because when you come to put your hands on a client, whether it be to assess or whether it be to treat, you have to know what your intention is. And in order to know what your intention is, you need to understand how you're trying to affect those principles with manual osteopathic treatment. So we're going to be looking at two principles. We're going to be looking at the principle of volume pressure, and we're going to be looking at the principle of mobility of the organ. Those are the two most important principles that govern the functioning of the esophagus, and that we're going to try to have an effect on and change and improve in order to help our client rid themselves of those terrible symptoms of acid reflux. So when we're talking about the pressure gradient within the chest, of course the pressure gradient within the chest, and whether it is abnormal or imbalanced in relation to other areas of the body, it's going to have a negative effect on the esophagus. So we're going to see later on in the course some of our more advanced techniques, how we can have a very rapid effect in changing and correcting and rebalancing the volume pressure within the thoracic cavity in relation to the other areas, and that will go a long way towards helping to improve function of the esophagus and reducing the chances of acid reflux. Our other principle that's very important is one of organ mobility. Now remember, in our Foundations course we talked about many different principles, but in this case mobility is important, and you're going to discover that the esophagus is actually quite an interesting organ. It's not just a tube through which the food leaves that tasty area in your mouth and it just gets, carried down into your stomach, somehow trying to bypass your chest. It actually is an organ that responds to a lot of interesting principles, and its mobility, or its ability to move and do what it needs to do, is going to be very important in ensuring that food goes down, but that stomach acid does not come back up. So once again, we're going to review that principle so that later on in the course when we're learning techniques, we're actually learning how to be able to reduce restrictions or have an effect on anything that might be affecting the actual mobility of the esophagus. We're also going to talk about what your treatment goal will be. You have to have that in mind when you're working on a client. I see a lot of beginning students in my class. They come in and right away they got their hands on the client and they don't even know where they are in relation to what it is that you're trying to treat. So imagine if I said, okay, we're going to work on the person's wrist. Please take your client's wrist, and they go like this. They're going to look rather foolish, aren't they? So that's why all of my courses start with a bit of functional anatomy. You have to know what it is that you're trying to treat, the location of things, and have that intention in your hands before you actually just say, okay, I'm going to try to do something to improve the acid reflux. And that starts with this chapter where we're going to be reviewing once again some of those most important foundational principles. So let's go on to the next lesson and let's get started.